Why retiring is not always as scary as you think.
I don't think retiring is scary at all, Mike. It's mostly something I greatly long for.
Perhaps you don't need quite as much money as you think that you might need. We ask them when they want to retire, and usually in response, we kind of get more or less a stock answer. It's almost like we have to qualify the question. Hey, tell us when you want to retire. They'll say 65, or like when I get to like Social Security eligibility, which is for most people now 66 or 67. Sometimes you just don't know what's possible unless you put it out to the universe that this is what I want. You want to start with what is ideal and then walk backwards if you need to. Once you have a better idea of what's changing, that can give you some more confidence in kind of ascertaining whether or not retirement is doable or not. Well, here we are. It's another episode of Saturday State of Mind. We're here today to talk about why retiring is not always as scary as you think. Perhaps you don't need quite as much money as you think that you might need.
I don't think retiring is scary at all, Mike. Then again, we literally do this for a living.
Sure. And you also haven't retired, in fairness.
Yeah, I know. So right now it's not scary. It's mostly something I greatly long for, but that's many, many years in the future.
So what routinely happens is people come in, they want to talk about their future. We ask them when they want to retire, and usually in response, we kind of get more or less a stock answer. They'll say 65, or like when I get to like Social Security eligibility, which is for most people now 66 or 67. So they kind of give us like these fill in the blank dates.
Sometimes they say yesterday.
Right. But, you know, you put the quips and the jokes aside. It's almost like we have to qualify the question. Hey, tell us when you want to retire, but please make it not something that you think that you're supposed to say or that you suppose that we want to hear. When do you actually want to retire? And that's where just you do get closer to either yesterday or as soon as possible, because a lot of people are just ready for that change.
You know, it kind of reminds me, we were talking not that long ago about, you know, just like the very common phrase, like, how are you doing? And when people ask you, like, how are you doing?
So I'm doing great.
How are you really doing?
Terrible. My dog just died.
Oh my God. What happened to Argo?
Right. You have to sometimes pry a little bit to get like Argos is fine, by the way.
Maybe it's not that dramatic, but that's what it is, you know, saying like, hey, when do you want to retire? People give you that answer. Well, when I'm like Medicare eligible, or, you know, I get a vest for a little longer, I go to, no. When do you want to retire?
Sure.
I'm not making you sign on the dotted line committing to a retirement date, but I am asking you, what is your ideal retirement? And then we got to just back out the math.
Yeah, we often have to ask the question twice, because the first time you get the polite response, the pleasantry, you ask a second time, then it starts to get a little bit real, right? I would say that when you're providing the response, you want to start with what is ideal and then walk backwards if you need to, but don't necessarily take something away just because you believe it's not, you know, realistic or you feel like you have to kind of cover more road or prepare better. Sometimes you just don't know what's possible unless you put it out to the universe that this is what I want. And I think what's troubling is people have a little bit of a difficult time imagining what their budget is going to look like in retirement, because certainly things are going to change. But what is going to change and how is it going to change? I would say for sure one of the big things that stands in people's way, it's also one of the bigger reasons that people think they have to work till 65 or longer, is the cost of healthcare.
It's a big cost and it shouldn't be taken lightly, right? So maybe they think they could work a little bit extra longer for that subsidy.
I mean, we could talk for an entire episode's length about how expensive healthcare is becoming in this country. It is very, very taxing. Even if you're working and you're sharing in the expense with an employer, if you're like paying even just half the cost, sometimes you're talking about multiple thousands per month. So people figure once I'm not bringing home an income, if I have to cover that same expense out of pocket, there's no possible chance that I'm going to be able to retire. So I have to at least get to 65, get onto Medicare, then things will be cheaper. But oftentimes people still don't even know, what does Medicare cost? What does it not cover? What's all the supplemental stuff about? So there's a lot of hesitation that, well, this expense is going to be scary. It's been scary. That's my experience. So it must continue to be scary after I retire.
Yeah, we've heard plenty of people come in here too being like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a part-time job just for healthcare benefits. It's no doubt one of the largest expenses, especially if you have your mortgage paid off in retirement. But it's just, you can't look at one thing in isolation when it comes to retirement planning, right?
Yeah. And I would say when we're talking about healthcare, Let's go through some like silver lining stuff. This is not going to be absolutely true for everybody, but speaking in generics, Medicare Part A is for free. Part B is nominal. Part D costs varying amounts depending on your prescription needs, but it's not unlikely for you to be able to cover yourself between somewhere like, I don't know, $200 to $400 a month, maybe on like the high side. Sure. That's not cheap per se, but compared to what your employer plan costs or what your share of the employer plan is, for a lot of people, that is going to be a reduction. So again, if you're trying to think about ways like that you might be able to justify retiring earlier, I wouldn't let healthcare necessarily stand in the way. You might be pleasantly surprised to learn that your costs are going to be lower than you think.
Sure. Because yes, healthcare is expensive, no doubt. But what else are we paying for retirement? We have to look at that, right?
So healthcare is up there. Another big one's housing, Jess.
Sure.
Okay. So, if you've got a mortgage that's at minimum costing you $1,000 or $2,000 a month, sometimes a whole lot more. Plus you have to layer in utilities, property tax, several other items. Housing is going to take a big chunk of your budget, no doubt. But remember, ideally, as we get to retirement, getting to that threshold and beyond, hopefully the mortgage is paid off or soon will be. And if that's going to be dropping off your balance sheet, that's going to like make free and clear for some people, 10, 20, maybe even up to 30% of their budget, making the continuance of work more of a voluntary thing as opposed to a necessity.
And that's why we're saying you can't plan off of one factor in isolation, because say you don't have a mortgage, but you want to stick it out at work for another year until you become Medicare eligible. Well, maybe you don't really need to. If your money's not going towards paying off the mortgage or paying some property taxes, then maybe you can afford to kick a little bit more funds towards health insurance and end up retiring earlier.
Right. Now, we can talk next a little bit about frivolities. Everybody's got a bucket list, those things that they want to do. Sometimes the best things in life are free, right? So going to the library doesn't cost a whole lot. Making a home-cooked meal, even like the more popular stuff these days, pickleball, a lot of that stuff you can do out in public. You just have to buy a racket, a TJ Maxx, no big deal. Mm-hmm. Some of that stuff's inexpensive. Some of it is really expensive, particularly if your bucket list includes travel. I was just trying to book a family vacation for us not that long ago. I'm online. I think it was one of those websites that looks at both the hotels and the flights, all that. And at first, all the numbers on the calendar were really cheap for the destination I was looking at. Mm-hmm. And then it said, hey, could you confirm what date are you going to be traveling? So I updated for the kids' school vacation and totally all the numbers on that calendar like quadrupled. Yeah. So I had this thought though, like I'm stuck with that 1 week in February. That is the 1 week our family can take a vacation because the rest of the time the kids are in school. But if I'm retired, even if I want to go to the most exotic or some of the more expensive locations, I don't have to go during peak week. Right? I can go off season, shoulder season, off dates. So sometimes like you go online and you say, how much does it cost to go here or there? And you see these big prices, but you don't have to necessarily follow the crowd anymore for some of the more like luxury items or more like interesting things that you've got on your bucket list.
Yeah, I think of a lot of the retirees to do a lot of midweek travel, right? It's maybe not only the cost, but the amount of people that are out there too. It's way more crowded to do certain things on the weekend than it is midweek. So I think there's really balance because you do have a lot more flexibility in retirement.
Some recommendations I would definitely make for people is to start with a budget. A lot of times folks that we work with don't have a budget. Why? Well, if you're successful and you've got good income, you're saving, oftentimes you don't have to track where every single little penny goes. That's one of the, things that you can enjoy best about having some responsibility in life and having some success. But when you are hesitant to retire because you're not aware of what amount of money it is that you need, well, you've got to confirm what that need is. So start with a budget, but then you can start almost going through it with a highlighter, a pen, whatever it is that you got at hand to start marking those items that are going to change. Hey, I don't have to commute as much, so I won't be spending as much on gasoline would be an example. Or we're dining out a lot on weekends just because we're both stressed out. We just want to relax. Maybe once we're retired, we'll be going out less often because we'll take up home cooking as a hobby or similar. The mortgage is about to be paid off. Let's dial in what our healthcare costs are going to be. Once you have a better idea of what's changing, that can give you some more confidence in kind of ascertaining whether or not retirement is doable or not.
And I think that's really the benefit of working with a financial professional is that, hey, listen, you know how much it costs to live and you got to just figure out this math problem. I have this much, it costs this much. Can I make it, happen? But I think working with a financial professional, they give you that perspective, that insight onto, can I actually make this a reality? So if this information was helpful, like and subscribe and check out some more videos on our channel. If you liked this video and it helped you, watch another one and don't forget to hit subscribe.